Hi everyone, how are you today? Lovely day, isn't it? Okay, today we are going to talk about modal verbs. We are going to discuss most of them. Yes, we are going to see uses and examples. Here it says only part 1 because we are not going to talk today about absolutely all of them, but most of them, as I said. Here we go then. First, I'm going to start with obligation. For obligation, we've got, I started with must. Yes, we use must to express strong obligation, usually obligation imposed by the speaker. Yes, and it can be used for present and future. When I say it can be used for present and future, it means that the meaning of the sentence can be present or future, but remember that must is a modal, so it doesn't change the form. Okay, after it, we've got infinitive without to. Yeah. Then we've got have to. Have to is used as well for strong obligation, but this time obligation that is not imposed by the speaker. It's what we call external obligation that comes from somebody else. Have to is a semi-modal, meaning it has the meaning of a modal, but it's actually a verb. So because of that, we can use it in all the tenses. We can conjugate it. Yes, and here we've got examples of present, future, and past. Yeah. Most times, the difference between must and have to is so thin, so you can use one or another. So don't stress yourselves too much over obligation imposed by the speaker or not. Okay. We move on to need to. Need to is also used for strong obligation or for necessity, as the verb says. Being the same as have to, being a semi-modal, it means that we can conjugate it, yes, so we can have it in all the tenses. And we also use should or ought to express weak obligation though. Yeah, so if I say I should do some homework tonight, it is kind of obligation, but it's not as strong as if you said I have to do some homework tonight. So it's weaker. If you need to talk about what your teacher told you to do, for example, you should use have to, not should. Yeah. Okay, these are the models for obligation. We move on and talk about the lack of obligation. Falta, lack of obligation, or something that is optional. Okay. Here we've got the not have to, that we can conjugate again. We can use it in all the tenses. So I can say you don't have to bring, you didn't have to pay. Okay. We also have don't need to, not need to, that in the same way as not have to can be used in all the tenses. Yeah, we conjugate the verb need. And then what we've got here is the modal need. In this case, need is a semi-modal. In the second cases here, it's a modal. What does that mean? It means that after this, you will have infinitive without to, or perfect infinitive if we talk about the past. Anyways, the meaning is the same. So if I say, you needn't book a table in advance, is the same as if I said, you don't need to book a table in advance. The meaning is the same. It's just that you've got two possibilities here, to use a verb or to use a modal. Okay? For the past as well, I can say, we needn't have cooked. No hizo falta cocinar. No teníamos que cocinar. Or we didn't need to cook. Yeah, you can also use the verb, but you need to know these differences. Okay, we move on to prohibition. Prohibition, something that you can't do. For prohibition, we've got, first of all, mustn't. Mustn't is used for present and future. Yeah, I mean, the sentence has a present or future meaning. You do not change the modal. Yeah. We can also use can't in the same way as mustn't. And couldn't if you talk about the past prohibition. Okay? And because all these three are modals and can only be used for present or future, or in the case of couldn't for past, they are not very flexible. If we need to use other tenses like, I don't know, future with will, or present perfect, past perfect, or any other tense for the matter, we can use other verbs. Yeah, and we have here a list of verbs: forbid, ban, not allow, not permit, not let. Yeah, these are verbs that express prohibition. What I would like you to pay attention is how you use these verbs in tenses, and I would like you to pay more attention to the verb let. Yes, remember that we use let plus somebody plus infinitive without to, unlike the other verbs that are with infinitive with to. Be careful here. Okay, we finished prohibition. Now we talk about permission. Permission. Now, in order to ask for and give permission, we have three modals. We have the modal can, which is quite informal and most people use it in the daily speaking. Yeah, can I borrow your bike? A bit more polite option is could. So could is a little bit more formal than can. Yes? So I can also ask, could I borrow your bike? And then we've got may. May, which is quite formal, but it means the same thing. So I can also say, may I borrow your bike? This depends on the degree of politeness that you want to use in the sentence. Here you've got questions, but you can also use these models in sentences that are not questions, like, can I borrow your bike? Yes, you can borrow my bike. Yes, you could borrow my bike. Yes, you may borrow my bike. Okay? So you can also use them in other structures, not only questions. Also, to talk about permission, we have some verbs. Yes, because as these are modals, I cannot use them in other tenses. Yeah, these are only used for present or future. Well, to ask for present permission. So I have the verb allow, permit, and let, which can be used in different tenses. Yeah, to talk about the past, to talk about future, to use them in other structures. Yes. Again, please be careful with the verb let. Yeah, the verb let doesn't go with infinitive with to. The others, yes. This being said, we move on to advice and recommendation. For advice and recommendation, we have so many things here. I'm going to start with should and ought to. Of course, also the negative, shouldn't, oughtn't to. These are used to give advice in present and future. Now, then we've got had better. Had better is a very common model, but it implies consequences. So if you don't follow this advice, there are consequences. Yeah. Then we've got must, have to, need to, and even mustn't. Yes. If you want to give strong advice or strong recommendation, this is much stronger than should or ought to. Yes. Here you have the examples. Anyways, you need to be careful to use them in contexts that show its advice, not, for example, prohibition. Yes, look at the use, for example, of mustn't. Okay, mom, you mustn't work so much. You look exhausted. Yeah, so this mustn't work is not prohibition. It's simply me telling my mom, oh you're exhausted, work less, no? Okay, we also have two verbs that we can use for advice and recommendation. Obviously, the verb suggest and recommend. Yes, that can be conjugated, all the tenses. Yeah. And here at the end, we've got some expressions. You can say it's time, it's about time, or it's high time. The meaning is the same. Then we use a person, me, you, yes, and past simple. This expression is to express advice in present and future. Be careful here. Even though here you've got past simple, what you express is in present and future. Okay? So I can say, it is time we went home. Es hora de irnos a casa. It's getting very late. Yeah? This high or about do not have another meaning. So if you say it's high time we went home, the translation would be the same. Yeah? Or it's about time to we went home, the translation is the same. We are going to discuss this a little bit more in class in case you have doubts, because it's not something that you see a lot in the exercises in the book. Okay? And the last thing I want to talk about today is models that are used to express regret or criticism. Criticism is when you when somebody made a mistake and you say that, oh, you made that, if you had done things differently would have been better. Okay, so for this we've got should and ought to, but this time with the perfect infinitive form. Yes, like in these examples, you should have listened to me when I told you this car was not good. Deberías haberme escuchado o haberme hecho caso. Yes, ought to the same. We oughtn't to have thrown away all the books. No deberíamos haber tirado todos los libros. Okay? This is the translation and it's the same as in your language. So if you translate it, it should be easy to understand these models. Okay? Well, this is all for now. And if you do have doubts, we're going to discuss them. In class, we are going to revise it a little bit again. Yes? And well, I wish you a happy weekend and see you next class, guys. Bye-bye.